my time schedule is not always up to date as I always make it on my last videos, but I am back with a new video, and I actually came across this idea of a video recently where I was just scrolling through YouTube as we all do, and I came up from an evolution style video, which I thought would be very interesting to give it a crack. So this is my little evolution style video. So this is going to look back at my evolution from when I first started in goth culture. So basically talking about the baby days and through the transitions of styles, like hairstyles, fashion styles, and up to modern days. So hope you'll have fun, let's have a few laughs and enjoy. So in preparation of this video, I decided to take a nice little trip down memory lane, which meant I had to scroll a long way down on my Facebook page, which took me all the way back to 2010, which 12 years of photos is a lot. And it was actually really funny looking at what I used to look like back then. So even before I got comfortable wearing makeup, I'd always try to kind of rebel with the dress code of my school. Being an only boys school, where there's a strict uniform code, I managed to find like little loopholes between. So I used to come in with just a little bit of black eyeshadow, my fingernails just painted black, and whenever they would try to question it, I would always just refer to the dress code book saying there's nothing here saying I can't wear that. So I got away with that to begin with. And then looking back at some of the early photos I did find, I remember finding a picture from the Him and Domin gig of that same year, and looking back at it, was actually really interesting because obviously Him was quite a romantic band, and Domin was to an extent as well. So me wearing that type of shirt with very faint grey and black eyeshadow, it was very poorly applicated, and I'm not even going to give myself a hard time for this because it's just me getting used to wearing makeup, or getting comfortable wearing makeup, should I say. But then around that same year, that's when I started socialising in town, and that's kind of my little way of expressing myself outside of school times. And I remember the first few months of me going and socialising, I was named Crow because I used to come in wearing crow makeup because that was my kind of portal into that type of scenery. And that was all good. And then obviously the more I hanged out there, the more my baby bat phase kind of kicked in, because even though I loved the goth aesthetics as a baby bat, I was into Cradle Filth at the time, so I was there with Cradle Filth t-shirts. The typical more goth look of the 2000s, which was, you know, the new rocks. I lived in those things. Used to have the long trench coats, not particularly leather per se, but I always remember having this black type of cottony fabric from Living Dead Souls, and I don't know if this will continue, but I remember that brand being the safe haven for beginner goths. And I actually forgot about the collar I used to wear. I didn't realise there was such a thing, but looking back for all these photos, I used to wear this little choker collar which had studs about that yay big, and I always remember that in particular. I think I still got it somewhere in my old place. But then also when it came to the winter, I had this really awesome cardigan where it looked black, but it was one of those in-out ones. So it was black on the one side, and then it was like a bluish black striped one, which never used to go onto that side really, but it worked really well, especially with the those big industrial pants. So I used to wear that a lot. Oh crap, I forgot I used to wear that. Now looking back, summer when I first started, it was just a mesh top, those big chainy baggy trousers, and the new rocks. Yeah, we all went for those. But then obviously during that time where I stopped socialising in town, I started finding more of a style. So we're talking about end of 2011 at this point, beginning of 2012. So even during this time where if bands were playing, I'd still make an effort to look good. Find some pictures of what I used to do. So there's one me going to the Murder Dolls gig, there's one I mean going to a Black Veil Brides gig. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, don't judge. So we still had that effort, but I was never ever the person to just kind of go in a t-shirt. I always wanted to make that extra effort, which I can't blame for. So went through that, but then outside of gigs, I definitely felt more comfortable in my own appearance as well. So there were days where if I didn't fancy wearing makeup, I used to have my long curly hair and just a leather jacket, and used to have my top off, or there were times where I used to wear like my so-called distressed shirts, which I did a very awful job. I remember my first attempt it was at those Ain't Nothing But a Goth t-shirts, which I think was a Manson Tainted Love t-shirt, and literally my depiction of that was just cutting circles. It was an awful attempt, and don't know what's happened to that shirt now, but looking back, it was fine for then. And I think there was a time where, because my hair was so long, thick and curly, this is why I didn't get too much into backcombing, because it was very hard to maintain, and especially when I used to swim a lot as well. So what my dad used to do, bless him, was on the Saturdays, I used to swim for about an hour and a half, and then he would drive me all the way into town, and we'd literally have like my golf stuff in the back of the car, and the way how I would dry my hair was using the little air conditioning at the front seat, so you just quickly dry it off, and then literally get changed, go into town in like this big church where we used to congregate, but there was no makeup, so literally just slap on white Stargazer and just very quickly black lipstick, and literally put my fingers in the black eyeshadow, just put it on, which, yeah, we all go through those phases. But then obviously if you look through these ones, it still wasn't great, but I got a little bit better when it came to blending. Then it's also at the same time I was very invested into wearing shirts. Back in the town days, I did go into my Victorian stages sometimes, but then I felt very comfortable wearing predominantly black shirts. Still had a face of makeup that looked like a clown in cake, but obviously it's one of those things. I think 2012 was definitely my style of black shirts, white face, and big hair, if I could. And then shortly after that, I remember coming to 2013, I think this is about summertime, where I got very bored and decided to have a white streak in my hair. I blame Sweeney Deville personally, but who knows. And yeah, I remember that going well. It had, you know, that gingery look to it, which I worked on around it until I got that white to the point where it was just dead hair. It completely burnt off, but I didn't know any better that time. And I remember going to Serbia with that look, and the amount of looks I had for that was just unbelievable. But then I remember November, December time of that year, I started experimenting more in the trad goth look. So I used to go to charity shops, get like the cheapest blazer I could, get some buttons, and, you know, kind of start that little progression. It was a very young one type of look to start off with. It was very plain, and then I started making my own patches, started using fabric paint to paint my own stuff, and I did try backcombing my hair, and it was literally that big. And it was great, but it was just very hard to maintain all the time. And there are photos here where I'm very overly trad gothed, not just the blazer but the trousers as well. Still extreme white makeup, and my hair is just kind of not sitting to the part. So after that year, I ended up getting my hair cut, and because I was so invested in the 80s at this point, I got my hair like Prince. And what I loved about that look was, if I wasn't, you know, going to an ungoth event or going to be formal, I could just pull it off, just put some products in. And looking at it now, I look like I could be a member in a synth band, a new wave band, and I don't regret that. But then you also have the trad goth look, which I love that cut. It's still probably my favourite cut to this day, and I wish that I could just get that same look, but every time I tried to replicate it afterward, it never went well, and you'll see why. But it's actually quite funny how mullets have got big into fashion, but it's just a case of finding someone that can cut curly hair. Yet to find one, but that'll come on time. And so where are we now? We are at 2014, so this is where I was going for a huge trad goth look. My white streak was halfly chopped off, I still had the little white splatters in it. And I remember loving that look. It was a simplistic look, t-shirt, makeshift blazer with buttons, Doc Martens I remember wearing at those points, and winkle pickers. So it was actually a really good look, and I think that's the most comfortable I've felt during my time as a teenager. So then we moved to the summer, and obviously this is when my band, the Acid Ballet, at that time were, still kind of finding our ground. In fact, it's a really funny picture of probably 3 out of the 5 members making an effort. But that's just personal preferences. I think I remember around this time I got very bored with that trad mullet. So I think this point my hair was growing out. So I remember going to town, going to Bad Apple, my mum paying for my cuts just so I could get my hair almost like a number 2, but leaving my bat wings there, but leaving this quite relaxed, having all the thickness taken out. But then afterwards I went to a friend at the time who was doing a hairdressing course, and I just got to Mohawk my hair. And I remember that journey back on the train, just calling my mum saying, "Done something you're not gonna like it. Sure, you got a Mohican, didn't you?" Yep, puts the phone down on me. So it's really funny looking back now. And that Mohican, I actually lived on that thing for ages. I took half decent care of it actually. And obviously when your hair's curly, it's very hard to really maintain a good hawk. So there was a time also where shortly afterwards I got bored of the black side because I was playing safe, so I just dyed, or should I say bleached, my side white and the bat wings for a couple of concerts, and it was alright actually. Yeah, I remember going to London like that. I looked more death rock, if anything, during this time without meaning to. But then afterwards, I think I went through a weird phase of dip dyeing the ends of my bat wings black, which seemed pretty cool because what I liked about that little look was if I didn't want to put my hawk up and let my hair down, the ends of it would just kind of blend in, so it looked natural. It was like a chameleon method, should I say. I think around this time I got bored of that, surprise surprise, and decided to shave my sides off but keep my bat wings. And the look I had at this point, it didn't go all the way around, so it was like a 90-degree cut where it would go from there and stop there. So it was like a perfect right angle. And that worked really well. I remember going on tour with that haircut, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely for the London show. I'll try and find this one particular picture where I'm in pinstripe and I have an eye patch over. This is where I was slowly getting into Japanese culture because the girl I was seeing at that point was half Japanese. And during that time, I got very invested in bands like Modesmoir, Madasama, early during Grey as well, because I found that androgynous look to be very inspiring. And so for about 2 months, I was, as far as band status goes, I was doing some of Japanese kimono, huge hair with an eye patch. And it looked really cool, but it was really awful to maintain. So outside of that, on my normal day-to-day basis, I got to the point where I just literally got completely fed up and just shaved this entirely. So I just had pure shaved sides. Hair was slicked back most of the time. Sometimes I would sweep it over to one side, kind of be lazy with it. And I remember loving that look, actually, but as you know, when you shave your sides, it gets so frizzy. So then I stuck with that for a good half a year, I'm gonna say. And yeah, I think around autumn time, this is where I grew it out, I think. So this is when my hair was growing out, and I left my hair just naturally curly for the November time. And I remember shaving some facial hair, but then keeping this look around for a couple of shows, which I was a bit like a Tony Iommi type of dude. But at the same time, it worked. And then I think around 2016, once again, I had my shaved sides, because I remember this very vividly, where, so this is when obviously Bowie died, and you can actually find, if you go right down that category, that's when I did a lot of my videos. So I remember having shaved sides, still very much into my trad look, but then I started getting a bit into new goth as well, and appreciating that type of new goth look. So I went through this weird thing of really minimized, almost like a grungy type of new goth look, where my sides were shaved, my hair would be up, and then I would basically take a 180 on my traditional look. But then at the same time, I remember going to Serbia and having my Mohican up at that time, and still kind of whipping around, but I was wearing a lot of Killstar as well. We all go through those phases. So that was the pinnacle of 2016, and I remember, because I stuck around with this for a long time, where I'd shave my sides, and in fact I think it was around this time where I shaved completely around it. It was about 2017, 2018, and I still had my hair up, but it was all shaved around the side, and it was really cool of a certain look, especially when you're going quite death rocky, cold wavish, and even new gothy. Then I remember getting bored as the hair was growing back out. I remember dyeing it white, which looked really, really good, and I really do miss that look. But then obviously when the hair grows out, I got very bored, so I remember dyeing it red, and it looked really good for a short period of time. But when you got curly hair, it doesn't grow out. That grows out and then drops, so it looked really stupid every time I had my hair slicked back, and my curls would kind of curl up, and I'm working, my shadow used to look like devil horns. So there's actually a really awful picture of me trying to gel it, which didn't fall well at all personally. And then I think around this time I just started letting it grow out, because at this point, whilst I was growing my hair out, my fringe was excessively long, and it worked pretty well. I remember dyeing my hair black, my sides black, and just letting it grow out. And this fringe I had looked really cool. It was a bit like a Domin fringe. And the only problem with it was when you were trying to put your hair back, is the case you couldn't put it central, you had to kind of put it to the side. So I remember around 2019 having that look, trying to make it work with a lot of things, even when backcombing it. And around this time, I think I was happy with being in the equilibrium of wearing casual stuff, making it look smart, and then also looking quite extreme when I can, because beforehand I was always in that purgatory stage of which one should I be. But then I found my very relaxed stage, which I prefer. I think I've kind of stuck to this day. I'm very much casual turtlenecking. In fact, I think it was the end of 2019 where I started wearing more turtlenecks, because that's when you'll get colder, and I just found a general love for these because of the fashion I had. Appreciating turtlenecks a lot in the end of 2018, but it was by 2019 where I got completely obsessed and loved this stuff, and now stuck with me. But I remember 2019, I tried to cut my hair again, and I have tried cutting my hair to that trad look a numerous couple of times beforehand. One which I did forget to mention was during the acid ballet days, where I'll try and find some pictures of this, where it's quite shortish, and it's trying to go for like a very excessive 80s look, but it didn't fall well. So I forgot to mention that one, just remind myself. And this one, I remember going to Slovenia and Serbia a lot at this point, and it looked awful. It was probably the worst cut I ever decided to do, because no one knows how to cut a good mullet nowadays. So I remember going to Exeter Festival with that cut, and it only looked good in that picture because I'm at the angle. Apart from that, that's probably the worst haircut I've ever had. So naturally I grew it, and as the more I grew it, the more I kind of swapped my style around and see how I could fit with it. But then obviously 2020, lockdown happened, so there was hardly any reason, so I just grew my hair out as much as I could. What else can you do? The hairdressers were closed. And my style at this point was predominantly just turtleneck, leather jacket, and it was kind of like a minimal goth look, where it was just pure black. It was smart casual, and I would still wear the excessive trad goth stuff sometimes, but I was creating more of that stuff than wearing it, especially during lockdown time, especially with the idea of me going to Wave Goth at Trafford when it's all finished. So that's basically what my look was. And then around 2020, when the first lockdown was restricted, that's when I started, backcombing my hair a lot more, And that's when I was getting more involved in moving down to Brighton. I remember my look at that point basically being either minimal trad goth, or it was shirts basically, because it was very warm at that time. But then I remember around November time we got into a second lockdown, and this is when my hair just became untamable. I couldn't backcomb or anything like that. It looked really ridiculous, so I just let it grow out. I looked like a poodle at this point, and you have to compromise on what you can do. I remember wearing like the old Living Dead Souls Victorian-esque type of coat. It was like a whale tail coat. I used to have one of them back when I was a teenager, but I also had another one. I used to kind of wear that a bit more, along with just standard overcoats. And now, moving into 2021, it's basically just the same style. The only kind of difference is that I've got my hair cut back then, which I loved. Caitlin, my friend from Turtlenecks, went over to hers at one point and she just cut my hair. And I just remember asking for it to be short there and quite long at the front. And I think it's still my favourite haircut up to this day. And I just remember being so comfortable with that haircut that it just made everything I wear look great. And I think that's kind of the evolution from back days being very extreme, you know, awful makeup type of stuff, to kind of progressing fashion wise, and then makeup kind of was evolving a little bit more around 2013 to 2016 marker, and that's when my evolution of trad goth and new goth came. And then I hit a certain peak where I just kind of tamed it down, and the more minimal you are, I find, the better it became. And that is my evolution video. I hope you liked it. So if you've got any questions, any recommendations for any more videos, let me know, and I shall see you very soon.